H.H. Holmes, Chicago, and then the H.H. Holmes Hotel. Um, so I'll let Kern jump in the box and tell a little bit
Hey,
about, and then we'll jump right into it.
how are you? Nice to meet
Good. How
you.
are you? It's good to meet you
I'm
too.
trying to fix my camera. We're a little early today. We're trying to get some things done. I love your hair. It is beautiful. All right, so I am trying to get my camera working here. My name is Kern. I'm all over the app. But okay, so I stream all the time. I'm here idol winner. I sing. I play 12 instruments. I do a talk about autism every Thursday, and I'll be getting my new show either this Saturday or the next. That's a little
That's
bit about
awesome.
me.
Yay.
It's going to be called Getting
Congratulations on
Candid
that.
with Kern, having a conversation and a connection with other streamers.
I like it. That's awesome, Kern. Everybody make sure that you favorite Kern, and I'll go ahead and let you jump out of the box and then just go ahead and request the queue again, and I'll bring you back in after our first topic. Thank you,
Perfect.
Kern.
Thank
Everybody
you.
favorite Kern. Okay, so like I was saying, person, place, or thing. We are a featured show, so please follow the featured show rules, which is no drinking, no smoking, no cursing, and no nudity. Today's topic does contain some sensitive material, so definitely viewer discretion is advised for this week's topics. Um, so make sure you stick through all the way through too, because we'll talk about the quote of the week and then honorable mentions at the end. Um, so Herman Webster Mudgett is how H.H. Holmes started. That's his actual legal name. He was born on May 16th of 1861 to Levi Mudgett and Theodore Price. They were both descended from the first English immigrants in that area. On July 4th, 1878, Herman married Clara Lovering in Alton, and then they had a son named Robert Mudgett, and he served as the city manager in Orlando, Florida. So after he got married and had a baby at the age of 18, Mudgett enrolled in the University of Vermont, but he wasn't satisfied with the school there. So he left just after attending for a year. And then in 1882, he entered the University of Michigan's Department of Medicine and Surgery. And then he graduated in 1884 after passing all of his exams. Um, while he was enrolled at the university, he worked in the anatomy lab under Professor William James Herdman. He was the chief of the anatomy instructor, and the two were said to be engaging in grave robbing, essentially, to sell the bodies to the school for their cadaver lab. Um, and then he also was an apprentice in New Hampshire under Dr. Wright, who was a noted advocate of human dissection. And then years later, when Mudgett was suspected of murder and claimed to be nothing but an insurance fraudster, he admitted to using cadavers to defraud life insurance companies several times in college. Um, Housemates described Mudgett as treating Clara violently, and in 1884, before his graduation, she moved back to New Hampshire and later wrote she knew little of him afterwards. After he moved to Moores Forks, New York, a rumor spread that Mudgett had been seen with a little boy who later disappeared, and Mudgett claimed that the boy went back to his home in Massachusetts. No investigation ever took place, and he quickly left the area. So they didn't even really investigate that little boy. So Herman was a scam artist. He would pull like insurance fraud schemes, and then later on he became the first documented serial killer in America. Um, so that's where kind of the suspicion comes in. So after he traveled to Philadelphia, he got a job at the Norris State Hospital, but quit after a few days. And then he took a position at a drugstore in Philadelphia. But while he was working there, a boy died after taking medicine that was purchased at the store. Holmes denied any involvement in the child's death and immediately left the city right before moving to Chicago. So we're seeing a pattern here where people seem to be dying around him and he seems to be just up and leaving. Like as soon as any suspicion falls on him, he kind of just bounces. Um, so he changed his name to Henry Howard Holmes before moving to Chicago to avoid the possibility of being exposed by victims of his previous scams. So after he moved to Chicago, he changed his name to Henry Howard Holmes, H. Holmes, um, because of all of the fraud and crime that he was bringing to his area. In late 1886, while he was still married to Clara, he married Myrta Belknap in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He filed for divorce from Clara a few weeks after he married Myrta, an alleged infidelity on Clara's part. But his claims couldn't be proven and the suit went nowhere and it was eventually just dismissed. The surviving paperwork says that Clara was never served with the paperwork, and she has the right to defend herself. So that's why it was dismissed. Myrta and Holmes had a daughter named Lucy, who was born on July 4th of 1889 in Chicago. And Lucy became a public school teacher. Holmes lived with Myrta and Lucy in Wilmette, Illinois, but he spent most of his time in Chicago tending to business. And then Holmes married Georgiana Yoke on January 17th, 1894 in Denver, Colorado, while he was still married to both Clara and Myrta, which was illegal back then too. Holmes arrived in Chicago in August of 1886, which is when he began using the name H. Holmes. He came across Elizabeth S. Holton's drugstore at the northwest corner of South Wallace Avenue and West 63rd Street in Inglewood. And Holton gave Holmes a job, and he did so good that he actually ended up buying the store. And when he bought the store, he purchased an empty lot across from the drugstore where he started in on his castle. And we'll talk more about the castle there in just a minute. Let's see. So Holmes, he had several different charges being filed on him and several different crimes that he was being prosecuted for during this time. One of them was arson. His hotel actually burnt to the ground and they were trying to blame Holmes for that. He probably did do it. But with the insurance companies pressing to prosecute him for arson, Holmes left Chicago in 1894 and he reappeared in Fort Worth. And he inherited property from the Williams sisters at the intersection of modern-day Commerce Street and 2nd Street. And he once again attempted to build another hotel without paying for his suppliers and contractors. So when he first built his hotel across from the drugstore, he only paid some of the dues to have that built. And then there was a whole bunch of lawsuits for fraud because he didn't pay that bill. But this site, it didn't get completed, and it was never used for any additional crime. In July of 1894, Holmes was arrested and briefly jailed for the first time on the charge of selling mortgage goods in St. Louis. He was promptly bailed out, but while in jail, he struck up conversation with a convicted outlaw named Marion Hedgepeth, who was serving a 25-year sentence. Holmes had concocted a plan to swindle an insurance company out of $10,000 by taking out a policy on himself and then faking his death. So Holmes promised Hedgepeth's a $500 commission in exchange for the names of an attorney, or the name of an attorney that would help him do that. However, Holmes forgot to pay him that $500, and so Hedgepeth actually went to the police to let them know that he was planning on doing that. So instead, Holmes asked his business partner and one of his best friends, like this is a guy that he had worked with since college, you know, like it's like a lifelong friend that he had, that he had convinced into pretending to take his own life for that insurance money. But what happened instead is Holmes actually did end up unaliving. His name was Pitzel, and Pitzel's wife and their 3 children. I can't get a whole bunch into that because this is a family-friendly show, but there was definitely some really sick, twisted things going on there. And if you want to know more about it, I would definitely recommend looking into H.H. Holmes, the killings of H.H. Holmes. It's quite fascinating, really grotesque. If you're not used to, you know, gore and true crime, I wouldn't recommend looking it up. But if you're just joining us on Person, Place, or Thing, it's where we talk about a person, a place, and a thing for this week in history. Our person is H.H. Holmes, and we are actually coming up onto the last of getting to the end of H.H. Holmes' life. So what had happened, what finally got him caught, is they found the remains of his friend. They were the burnt remains of his friend, and then that started a whole investigation into all of H.H. Holmes. He was only convicted of 9 homicides, but he confessed to 27 in just Chicago alone. Chicago, Indianapolis, and Toronto. However, some of the crimes that he had admitted to, they were still alive. So he had confessed to killing, I think, 6 people that they were actually able to go find and see that they were still alive. So he was technically only convicted of 1 homicide. However, it's believed that there was at least 9 homicides connected to him. And on May 7th of 1896, Holmes was hanged in the prison in Philadelphia County for the murder of Pitzel. So that's kind of the really quick version of H.H. Holmes. I do have some fun facts and tidbits here. So Kern, if you want to jump in the box, I can go over these fun facts and tidbits with you, and you can give me some of your input on H.H. Holmes.
Hi, I'm back. All right. Okay. So go ahead. You the lead, and I will tell you what I've researched and what I have found and some of my findings and everything else.
Okay. All right. So fun facts is he essentially forced his business partner to fake his own death. And he sold the skeletons of his victims to medical science. He was married to 3 women at the same time. He was bullied as a kid. He was only convicted and sentenced to 1 murder, but admitted to 20. And the newspaper paid him $7,500 for his confession, which makes you wonder if maybe that's why he confessed to so many.
Yeah. Okay, so exactly. I read all about it. Also, if you guys are interested, there's videos that you can watch, short documentaries that will give you more information about their findings and the situation. Sorry, we're having technical difficulties with the camera. Okay, we're set. All right, so there was at least 50 lawsuits in Chicago for him. I don't know if that was stated already, but also another fun fact about him is that he was executed for he admitted to 27 murders, but only found 1, and they went ahead and executed him by hanging, because that's the way they did things.
Yep.
And he was one of the first serial killers of our time. So that's important.
The first documented serial killer in America.
Yep. And the place that he built to perform these things was called the Myrtle Castle. And there was kind of like a glass blowing thing that he had, but in the infirmary that he had to glass blow, it was not the size of what would be necessary for glass blowing. He actually made it big enough to contain people. So he was he was exactly he was a con artist, obviously. And one of his last words, I don't know if we went over this, was I was born with the devil inside me. I cannot help murdering any more than a poet can help be inspired by a song.
Yes.
Last words that he had said upon his death, upon his hanging.
Yeah.
So that being the case, I mean, this guy was, I believe, a sociopath, in my opinion. And he was very intelligent at what he does, very crafty. This was not just somebody who just went on this. Everything was very calculated. The 4 marriages he had, everything that he had, and everything he'd done was like a chess game to this individual, right? Everything was planned out, beginning to end, to get property gain. And of course, some of the murders that took place weren't exactly necessary, but he couldn't help himself. He saw it as, hey, I win-win. I fulfill something, and I can also claim insurance fraud on these situations. So this guy was, lovely little narcissist. And
smart.
Extremely intelligent.
He was very smart.
Sorry, actually. Okay, so he was extremely calculated with everything he did. And he had it all planned out, from beginning to end, including the Myrtle Castle that he built. Everything was very calculated. Stop it. And then, so basically, this guy was just, and he was so smart. He had his doctorate. He went to school to learn fraud, basically, the ins and outs of things, so that he could do what he could do in order to maximize capacity for himself and productivity.
I think that that's where he started with his fraud was in the cadaver lab, because that's where he was taught, okay, you can go rob graves, bring the bodies to the school and get paid for that. And then eventually I think that it turned into more than just business, and it turned into pleasure for him.
Right.
So it's no longer a means for money, it's a means for gratification.
And hey, you know what? I'm getting paid to do something I actually really enjoy doing. And it became habitual. Like he formed his whole life, and then over the next victim he was going to do that. And it got to a place where it wasn't even really necessary, as his partner was ready to do this fraud with him and claimed that he had died, right, and was on board for it. So he didn't need to take the next step and actually physically make sure that happens. So obviously this became an addiction for him, unfortunately. And so that was a lot of the things that I had looked up and researched. And apparently there was more probably things that he didn't convict Like he didn't admit to, but they suspect
Yeah.
that there was more. Um,
Yeah.
so
He
and
was, and his confessions are strange too. Because I definitely believe that there's more than 27. I honestly believe more upwards of 200, because his whole hotel was
yes,
built around concealing his dirty little deeds.
right,
You know what I'm
yes,
saying? So there are reports of over 200, and I personally think that that is closer to the actual number of
I agree
victims
with
that
that. I
H.H.
think
Holmes
that's what
has.
he confessed to. But then again, I'm thinking, maybe he would want to see somebody who does that is kind of gonna get off almost like a badge of honor. You know what I mean? If you've ever heard
Hmm.
about Norman Bates and it's almost like a badge. You know what I mean? Like my
Right.
challenges, this is accomplishments, if you will, of how many
Yeah.
victims were in his back pocket. So I do agree, but I also disagree from that standpoint that I feel like he was at such a place and he knew he was going to have to be dealt with, that I think at that point I do believe he would have been like, just for bragging rights to himself, hey, these are my accomplishments, I have done this
Right.
many years. So that's why I was like, maybe, but maybe he kind of got off on the fact that he wouldn't get caught, because there's that too.
Or maybe he forgot.
We
You
are
know,
talking
I
about
mean,
H.H.
after
Holmes.
so many incidences, it would make sense that you would forget. You would, the ones that would stick out would
Yeah,
be the ones that aren't just
amazing.
normal dumping you into the wall and carrying on your day. You know what I mean? So
Yes,
I wonder
yes.
if that's some of it too, is that he forgot a lot of them. So this is person, place, or thing. It's this week in history. The person that we're talking about is H.H. Holmes, the first documented serial killer in America, who was executed May 7th.
Yes, May 7th. Yep. Which is just a few days after his birthday, and he was born May 16th. So he was a
Yep.
Taurus. And
Yes.
I mean, not that that matters, but just for content, here. Um, so that's basically the long short of it. He also claimed to be possessed by the devil himself. He,
Yes.
he claimed that that was inside of him, and that's what made him do some of the things that he actually ended up doing.
I almost would. So if you, we can't discuss like the gory parts to all of this, but
Of course.
if you've looked into it,
Mhm.
some of his deeds are like, you would have to be pretty freaking sick and twisted to commit a crime
I
like
don't think
that.
he had empathy. I think he was
I don't
a
think he did
psychopath.
either.
He had no empathy for anything
Definitely.
he did. Only pleasure from it. Like and you'll find that a lot of these cases, yes, a lot of these cases where you hear murders, they had a bad family upbringing. You will find that there's a connection with
Mm-hmm.
one of the parents not being in the picture, and abuse sometimes in the household, and also just bad situations. I'm not saying these form individuals every time, but I do see that there is a connection with that.
There is definitely a pattern. There is definitely a
There's a
pattern, and it
absolute
is
pattern
said
in
that
broken homes.
H.H. Holmes's father was abusive. However, they don't have any concrete evidence to be able to say yes, definitely. But there were rumors that his father was abusive towards him.
Oh, absolutely, and you will find that in a lot of the cases there was some situational abuse for them. Actually, most
Yeah.
of all of them, if you look back and you track the histories of all the famous, not, I hate to say famous and glorify them that way, because that kind of makes me a little sick, but anybody
Right.
who's on record, let's just say, for have done these horrific events, had some background, yeah, on abusive household situations. So it's kind of really,
Mm-hmm.
really, really important that, at least it's good to know, that these situations can create other things. But you've also
Yep.
seen some of the greatest, most amazing people in the world come from triumph and tribulation too. So I
Yes.
think it's really a matter of choice, because nowadays I think it's happened so much that it's kind of hard to say.
I think a lot of it is choice, but I think some of it is
Trauma.
just who you are, just your personality. Um, I think some of it is more your genetic makeup, whatever makes you you.
Yeah.
But we're
Do you
gonna
think
go
that
ahead and
people like him have a pre-existing situation because of who they are, or do you think it could be altered because of their situations that they experience or trauma, therefore, that create their issues? What do
I
you
think
think?
it's a combination of both. I think that you can be a mentally sound person with really good genetics, but something really, really traumatic could emotionally break you. And I think also clearly abuse and trauma, especially in our younger developing ages, can turn us into something dark.
Yep. But at the end of the day, I still believe like that is a choice. If you see yourself going, I mean, there is help available for people. There's ways, you
Yes.
know what I mean? So it's just interesting, the choices that people make when
Yeah.
they say they're not in control.
Yeah. It's hard. I don't know. It's really hard. Um, so we'll go ahead and move right on into quotes, and I'll bring you back in after our
Okay.
place, which
Thank
is
you, love.
Chicago. So our quote of the week is "Be silent as to services you have rendered, but speak of favors you have received." Um, this to me sounds is I really like this quote because to me it says, "Don't boast about what you've done, boast about what other people have done for you." Because I really feel like that's highlighting on the kindness of everybody else, and almost making a little more deserving comments. Does that make sense? Be silent as to services you have rendered, but speak of favors you have received. That's by Ludicus Annaeus Seneca. So our place is Chicago, Illinois. And if you're just joining, this is Person, Place, or Thing, where we talk about a person, a place, and a thing for this week in history. We just talked about H.H. Holmes, and we're moving right into our place, which is Chicago, Illinois. And the Chicago City website says that the city of Chicago covers an area of 60,000 hectares. I don't know what that is. And sits 578 feet above sea level on the southwestern shore of Lake Michigan at 190 kilometers wide and 900 or 495 kilometers long. It is the fifth largest body of fresh water in the world. The city is traversed by the Chicago and Calumet rivers. Chicago's extensive parklands, including 3,000 hectares of city parks, attracted an estimated 86 million visitors annually. As a multicultural city, that thrives on the harmony and diversity of its neighborhoods, Chicago today embodies the values of America's heartland, integrity, hard work, and community, and reflects the ideals in social fabric of its 77 distinct neighborhoods. Chicago is recognized across the United States as a very passionate sports town, and it's the leader of reforming public schools, enhancing public safety and security initiatives, providing affordable housing in attractive and economically sound communities, ensuring accessibility for all, and fostering social, economic, and environmental sustainability. Um, at a glance, Chicago is the third largest city in the United States with a population of nearly 3 million people. Um, it's home to 2,716,000 residents, 77 community areas, 100 neighborhoods, 8 major league sports teams, including Major League Baseball teams, and the United States President Barack Obama, former President Barack Obama. Chicago has 36 annual parades, 40 film festivals annually, 74 music festivals, more than 200 theaters, 250 live music venues, and 400 individual film and TV productions. Chicago is a city in a garden. So it's got 600 parks, 500 playgrounds, 70 nature and bird sanctuaries. Oh, dang, where'd it go? 307 fields for soccer, football, lacrosse, and more. 250 field houses, 534 tennis courts, and 6 indoor tennis courts, 29 beaches, and 26 miles of open lake front. That's amazing. Chicago has the second highest percentage of commuters riding their bikes to work. The bicycle commute times in the region average only 23 minutes. There are 303 miles of bike lanes. I really like to see the bike lanes because that helps cut down on emissions. There's 13,000 bike tracks and a 40-acre bike path for BMX and trail riding. Chicago is also a foodie destination. There's more than 7,300 restaurants in Chicago, 7 AAA diamond rated restaurants, 26 Michelin starred restaurants, 40 James Beard Award winning restaurants, and they host the annual James Beard Awards, 54 Bib Gourmand winners, and 144 dog friendly restaurants. Sports. So Chicago is also really big on sports. As much as Chicagoans like to play sports, we also love to watch the pros do it. Chicago has been named the best sports city by Sporting News 3 times and has TSC international ranking of sports cities every year since 2012. That is insane. So now that we've gone over kind of the basics of Chicago, let's go over the fun facts and tidbits of Chicago. If you guys are just joining, this is a weekly featured show called Person, Place, or Thing, where we talk about a person, a place, and a thing for this week in history. This week, for our person, we talked about H.H. Holmes. Our place is Chicago, Illinois, and our thing is going to be H.H. Holmes Hotel. I can't acknowledge the comments because it is a show, but I do see them and I do appreciate all of you. The fun facts and tidbits for Chicago is Chicago's nicknames include the Windy City, the City of Big Shoulders, the Second City, the White City, the City That Works, and the birthplace of modern architecture. It stood only 10 stories tall, but Chicago's home insurance building was the first skyscraper from the Willis Tower and Grand Greystones along Logan Boulevard and Lawndale Avenue. Chicago isn't afraid to make a statement. In fact, Chicago's daring designs and groundbreaking engineering feats have influenced architecture worldwide. The nation's first open heart surgery, although making history as one of the first Black physicians in the city, Northwestern University graduate Daniel Hale Williams performed the nation's first ever open heart surgery. As a result of the groundbreaking 1983 surgery, the patient was able to recover from a stab wound near the heart in less than 2 months. So the first open heart surgery was performed by the first Black physician in the city of Chicago. That's history. The world's only backwards flowing river. In the largest public earth-moving project ever completed in 1900, the Chicago River was engineered to flow backwards. This incredible achievement has a very practical purpose: to divert sewage away from Lake Michigan's fresh water supply. The first atom was split in 1942 at exactly 3:25 p.m. on the University of Chicago grounds. The moment is regarded as the start of the atomic age. Henry Moore's nuclear energy sculpture marks the spot today. World's tallest building designed by a female architect. It may not be the tallest building in Chicago. That honor goes to Willis Tower and the 110 stories. But the 82-story Aqua is the tallest structure in the world to be designed by a woman architect, Jane Gang. According to the architect, its outstretched balconies reference the limestone outcrop features commonly found in the Great Lakes region and serve a practical purpose of creating excellent views for the residents. The first televised presidential debate was in Chicago, and the good news is you can thank Chicago for the brownie. Bertha Palmer, wife of millionaire Potter Palmer, cooked up the fudgy squares for the first time at Chicago Palmer's house, just in time for their debut at the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition. H.H. Holmes and his hotel was created for the exposition, was what he told the investors. And it's the only one of Chicago's famous foods. Find out. Okay, so those are the fun facts and tidbits on Chicago. Kern, if you want to jump in the box, we can go over your thoughts on Chicago. It always reminds me of Ace Ventura. Chicago. Chicago. I see you, Peppermint. Are you there? Oh, there you are.
Hey, about that. So we all know Chicago as the Windy City, yes. And I know a lot of people who live there, and you know what I mean? It's very rich in history. A lot of things have happened in Chicago. We know about the pizza. We know about all kinds of fun facts that happen there. And a lot, believe it or not, again, a lot of some of the mysteries, missing people, came from Chicago. A lot of the big organizations, bunny rabbit ears, happened in the gangs and mobs of Chicago. So it was very heavily rooted in crime, like underhanded crime, not direct crime, but like organizations, money laundering.
Yes.
Yes, I'm avoiding saying the word because I don't know how the sensitivity is in the room here. So, but yes, it is known for its crimes of those sorts. It was never, there was a lot of, it was never overt, like Florida, as an example, being a person who lives in Florida, where it's these kind of crimes. These are a different type of crime, right? This is organized crime. You experience that a lot. Yes.
Yes.
So Chicago's known for that, and it doesn't. A lot of the people, serial killers and stuff that we learn about, a lot of them came from Chicago. It is a very
definitely. That's why I referenced that all of this information came from Chicago's city page, because it mentioned nothing of the crime rates, and I kind of did that intentionally because I feel that the mobsters and the crime rate is kind of like, it's in your face, like you can't.
Right. And they don't want to document too much because it's like, if you know type of situation. And most people
Yep.
Sorry about this. We're having camera difficulties all morning.
Exactly. But it is definitely known for its crime. I definitely like The Sopranos. When I think of The Sopranos, I think of Chicago.
Yes. Okay. So exactly. Yes. A lot of this stuff happens in Chicago, but it's not documented, so it's very underhanded. The labor stuff and some of the what's the word, union situations
Yep.
that took place. So yeah, we have a lot of organized situations in Chicago, and it's a lot, because of the way it is. It's not um obvious, it's not documented, but it is well known. Anybody who knows this is what happens here.
Mm-hmm.
That New
Yep.
York is famous for that, but New York does have a lot of more open crime, like burglary, theft, stuff like this. This was always, crimes did not happen like that in Chicago. Where in Chicago, you just went missing, and nobody asked questions.
Yep.
Nobody wanted
Yep.
to. They didn't want to document it because they'll be next on the chopping block, so to speak. So everybody's very hush, hush, hush. Let's not upset certain groups of people. So that's my take
Yep.
on some of the things I've learned about Chicago in researching this individual as well. So this is the place that we are talking about.
Isn't it appropriate that the first documented serial killer in America operated in Chicago, which is one of the highest crime rated areas in America? I just thought that was kind of fitting.
Yes, because now we know more things and we're a lot more open to addressing these situations because we have the technology for forensic and we have higher technology. But yes, a lot of them originated there because it was just known for its trade. They were big on trading. They were big on those things. And when you have trade, naturally you also have crime invested in it because sometimes you got to give and you got to take, and there's deals being made all the time.
Yep. Definitely.
That is my take
Definitely.
on the place. Hey, and you know what? It doesn't mean Chicago's not bad. They got some deep dish pizza. Go check it out. Just
I bet you Chicago does have some really good food.
Hey, they're known for their deep dish Chicago pizzas, guys. They're known for that, but they also, you better make sure you're hanging there with the right people. That's my advice.
So you're not eating rats.
Yeah, don't eat rats. The rats are bad. Okay. They do not taste like chicken. I mean, I would know, but I would assume. And very high in rat population as well. We need a barbecue. Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and jump out, and you let me know. We'll come back. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for your take on Chicago, Kern. If you're just joining, welcome to Person, Place, or Thing, where we talk about a person, a place, and a thing for this week in history. Our person was H.H. Holmes, the first documented serial killer in America. Our place is Chicago, Illinois, and that is where H.H. Holmes built his castle, which brings us into the thing for this week. It's the H.H. Holmes Castle. So when H.H. Holmes purchased the lot across from the pharmacy, he started building this place. It wasn't supposed to start off as a hotel. It was supposed to be like a mixed use building with apartments, and then the second floor, or apartments on the second floor, and then retail spaces, including the new drugstore, on the ground level. A creditor of Holmes named John died of apoplexy on April 17th, 1891 in the drugstore. And when Holmes declined to pay the architect or steel company, they sued him in 1888. And in 1892, he added a third floor, telling investors and suppliers that he intended to use it as a hotel during the upcoming World Columbian Exposition. Though the hotel portion was never completed. In 1892, the hotel as a whole, though, was kind of completed with 3 stories and a basement. And the ground level floor was the storefront. So that's where like the drugstore, that's where that was. Uh, Reports by the Yellow Press labeled the building as Holmes' murder castle, claiming the structure contained secret torture chambers, trapdoors, gas chambers, and basement crematorium. There's different recordings for this. Some recordings and articles that I've read say that that's all true, and others say that it's not true. Um, so we don't really know for sure. Um, let's see. Other accounts claim that the hotel was made up of over 100 rooms and laid out like a maze, with doors opening into walls or windowless rooms or dead end staircases. Um, but it was a moderately sized and kind of really unremarkable. It did contain some hidden rooms, um, but there are people saying that that was to hide furniture Holmes bought on credit that he didn't intend to pay for. So even on the best accounts, this this hotel was still built to cover up his dirty deeds. Um, the hotel was gutted by a fire that was started by an unknown arsonist. Um, Holmes was actually arrested for that, because I'm pretty sure that he lit it on fire, his own hotel on fire for the insurance money, and also to again try to cover up a lot of the dirty deeds that he was kind of he did have a basement. We'll get to it. But it was gutted by a fire. And then it was, after it was all gutted and everything, it was rebuilt, and it's now a post office. Besides his infamous murder castle, oh yeah, he did have another building for glass blowing that he was trying to get set up, and he glass blowing. So his kiln that he had was too big to be like considered for glass blowing. And in this hotel, they found like a basement. He had these little trap doors, right, that he would push people in, and then they would drop onto another floor where he would be able to get in there and then drop them down another floor that would go into the basement. And this is where he had like his table for dissecting, because remember, he would sell the bones and stuff to different schools, and stuff like that. So that is kind of how he did it. There were several different ways that he would kill his victims. He had different rooms that were set up that he would turn on gas and they would suffocate. There was rooms that he had that he would lock them in there and they just couldn't get out, and you couldn't hear them because it was soundproof, so they would just starve. Stuff like that. It's history. I've got it right here. I did research before I started. But yeah, there was all sorts of weird stuff in this hotel, and to me, it's almost like he built this with different ideas in mind, and then he adjusted and, I want to say, remodeled with the ideas of committing his murders. Fun facts and tidbits is Holmes was the only one who knew all of the nooks and crannies. The castle made him a significant amount of money. If he didn't get you one way, he had half a dozen other tricks up his sleeve, and every inch of his place was designed to hide its true purpose. Um, So that's the murder hotel. H.H. Holmes's hotel. They call it the murder castle as well. Um, it's super quick because, you know, a lot of our focus was H.H. Holmes this week, but we couldn't leave out the murder castle. So, Kern, do you have anything to add to that? Okay. There's not really a lot on the castle, other than, you know, it had these rooms and these rooms and these rooms. There's really not a lot to it. Um, but yeah, it's really crazy that yes, he did have children. If you look it up, just do a quick Google search for H.H. Holmes. You'll find there's so I could talk about H.H. Holmes for hours, guys. Like seriously, there is so much information on him that you could be stuck in a rabbit hole for days. What board game? You mentioned the board game, Emoji J. Get in the box. Tell me about the board game. He was very smart. I didn't read about it, Emoji J. I'm not sure. He was very intelligent. Yes, he really was smart. He was sick though. Some of the things that he did was just really twisted. So honorable mentions. Honorable mentions is where we go through and I just kind of briefly talk to you about different events that happened this week in history, that weren't mentioned. So the 7th of May of 1989, Casey Lewis, first of his name, was born in Mississippi. May 5th was Cinco de Mayo. May 5th of 1893, the Wall Street crashes, causing the Great Depression. May 6th of 1937, the German airship Hindenburg bursted into flames at 7:20 p.m. as it neared the mooring mast at Lakehurst, New Jersey. May 6th, 1527, the Renaissance ended with the sack of Rome by German troops as part of an ongoing conflict between the Habsburg Empire and the French monarchy. And May 4th, 1494, during his second journey of exploration in the New World, Christopher Columbus discovered Jamaica. Yes, my birthday is the 12th. That'll be a honorable mention next week. I agree, Kern. Intelligence can come off as insanity. Does anybody have anything else to add about H.H. Holmes, the murder house, or any of our honorable mentions? Anybody have birthdays this week? So it's going to be between, I think, May 2nd to May 9th. Except for Casey Lewis, first of his name. You're welcome, Kern. Do you have any upcoming auctions, shows you're going to be on, anything like that? Hey, so is H.H. Holmes.
We're outside now. Yeah, I have my show coming up. Either I'm gonna repilot Saturday or the following Saturday. Getting candid with Kern. And a couple of other things coming up. I'm not exactly sure which ones I'm gonna do, because we had to take a break for a little bit, but we're back now and we're doing some stuff. But thank you so much for having I had a lovely time with you, and
Yeah.
I think we learned a lot today, guys. I think we covered some really interesting facts, and I enjoyed myself. So thank you so much for having me. I
Good.
appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you for being here.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much. Bye. It was nice meeting you.
It was good to meet you too. So, now that we've heard about Kern, let me tell you about me and what I've got going on. So obviously we've got our featured show that's every Tuesday at 11 a.m. And then there's a lot going on with the nonprofit. As a lot of you know, on my regular stream, we talk a lot about the nonprofit that a lot of our regulars that come into the stream helped create. We make boxes and we fill them with items that help with coping and distraction, and then we donate those boxes to different groups and organizations that are high in suicide and substance abuse. The nonprofit is called hashtag Success Over Suicide and Substance Abuse, and we've currently taken on a project for kids. We're donating boxes to children that have been taken into state's care, and we're including vouchers for dance and martial arts and other activities to give these kids something to look forward to. When you're taken from your home by the state, it's hardly ever a good thing. You're already in a really horrible position. So we're hoping to give these kids something to look forward to, some self-esteem builders. Um, Thank you. Thank you so much. If you guys want to learn more about that, you can add my Instagram. And like I said, we discuss it all the time on my my stream. We actually all planned it. We all designed the box. We all structured the nonprofit. Um, it's just what we do. Um, so yeah, that's what we do here. We we try to help. Our goal is to bring down the national suicide and um, substance abuse. We is the nonprofit. So the nonprofit, it's a legitimate 501c3 nonprofit charity. So it's actually like it's an actual thing. Um, I agree, Melody. So yeah, Lisa, it's a board. We have a board of directors. Hashtag SOS.org is it's hashtag Success Over Suicide and Substance Abuse is the name of the nonprofit. So hashtag spelt out like my name, hashtag Success Over Suicide and Substance Abuse Inc. Or you can go to hashtag SOS.org where all of our information is on there for you guys, including all of the programs, all of our upcoming events, the different items that we put in the boxes. There's all sorts of information. Yep, there's all sorts of information on the website. So if you guys want to know more about the nonprofit, I would definitely encourage you guys to go check out hashtag SOS.org, spelled out, because it really is a good cause. We really are trying to save lives. Thank you, my friend. How are you? And thank you all for coming. I didn't mean to run so much into um, the nonprofit, but we were pretty much done with the show anyway. You're welcome. I can't hear you. Kinda, yeah. Thank you. Sorry. Just click skip, Phoebe. Scroll down more. I gotta adjust some of the settings. So if you just keep scrolling down, you should come up to it. It kind of got messed up when we were adding all of our tags and conversions and stuff like that. Yeah, look in the desktop